Okay, welcome everyone to the Milan Soccer Club podcast. But today I'm not feeling so good. I'm Alice, and I'm honestly heartbroken. Recording this episode literally just outside San Siro, still trying to process what happened. What a nightmare, a total disaster class in the Champions League. I mean, seriously, Milan eliminated? I just can't believe it. This episode is titled Nightmare in San Siro. Theo eliminates AC Milan. And it pretty much sums it up. Paul, tell me you have some answers for this mess.
Alice, I feel your pain, trust me. But we have to dissect this. It's not just about the elimination, it's about how we were eliminated. The red card to Theo Hernandez, his overall poor season, the questionable decisions from Coach Conceicao. I mean, it's a perfect storm of disaster, Alice, a complete meltdown. So buckle up because we're diving deep into this catastrophe. It's going to be painful, but necessary. We can't sugarcoat this. It was a complete disaster. I'm fired up and ready to get to the bottom of this.
All right, so let's lay it out for everyone. First, we're going to talk about Theo's absolutely brain-dead red card that cost Milan the Champions League qualification. Then, we need to talk about his overall poor season, controversial behavior, and whether that purple hair was the beginning of the end. And then, Conceicao's decisions. Like, what was that substitution about? We'll also get into the fallout, the disagreement over how to handle Theo, the financial hit Milan takes from this, and of course, what's next for the team. We'll also see how this impacts Theo's future at the club. And how about that early goal from Hernandez being completely wasted? Let's get into it. It's a lot to unpack, so let's get started.
Exactly, Alice. We're talking about a Champions League elimination that could cost Milan at least 10 million euros, minimum. We are talking about a serious amount of money, Alice. Maybe we should just buy Theo's contract and send him somewhere far away. But more importantly, it overshadows what should have been a straightforward victory. I mean, Hernandez scores early, San Siro is rocking. It was all set up. It was destiny to move to the quarterfinals. But no, we have to self-destruct. The performance of Hernandez was unacceptable and completely unprofessional. And then you have Ibrahimovic defending Theo, while legends like Capello, Boban, and Van Basten are tearing him apart. It's chaos, Alice. Utter chaos. We need to be very critical today, and I don't care about the drama.
All right, Paul, let's start with the most infuriating thing. Theo Hernandez's red card. 2 yellow cards, one for a completely unnecessary hold, the other for a blatant dive. With Milan in control of the game, how can you justify that level of stupidity? How can you justify that level of amateurism? It's really difficult to digest.
Alice, there's no justification. It's indefensible. Let's look at that first yellow, that unnecessary holding. I mean, what was he thinking? The team is up, you're in control, and you make a completely brainless foul in midfield. It's just lazy. It's like he just stopped caring for a second, You see that, Alice? Then comes the second yellow, the dive. Oh my God, it was a clear simulation, desperate, and frankly, embarrassing. This isn't some kid making his debut. This is a seasoned professional, a vice captain. He should be leading by example. In that case, I prefer to see a Primavera kid making mistakes than a veteran. Is unacceptable.
Okay, but diving is part of the game, isn't it? You see, players do that every game, and often they don't get penalized. Maybe he thought he could get away with it, and it was just bad luck?
Alice, come on. There's a difference between a tactical foul or exaggerating contact to win a free kick and a blatant, pathetic dive in the penalty box. It was so obvious, so desperate. And even if he did get away with it, is that the kind of player we want representing Milan? Cheating? Deceiving the referee? I don't think so. And the fact that it was his second yellow makes it even worse. He should have been smarter, more disciplined. He completely let the team down, Alice. Do you know how much it costs to the team not to move to the quarterfinals? This is a serious thing.
All right, I get it. It was a terrible decision. But do you think it's fair to pin the entire elimination on Theo? I mean, the team still had plenty of time to adjust and, defend the lead, or even score another goal.
Look, Alice, I'm not saying he's solely responsible, but let's be real. That red card completely changed the game. Milan was in control, then suddenly we're down to 10 men, having to defend for our lives. It disrupted the entire game plan. put immense pressure on the defense, and gave Feyenoord the momentum. And then, what happened? They scored. Can you see the chain reaction, Alice? So, while it's not entirely his fault, it was the pivotal moment that cost Milan the match. End of story. In that case, the history will remember this game because of Theo's errors, no matter what.
Okay, so the red card was a disaster. But let's zoom out for a second. This wasn't just a one-off mistake, right? I mean, Theo Hernandez has been underperforming all season. What's going on with him? Is it just a slump, or is there something more to it?
Oh, Alice, it's definitely more than just a slump. I think the numbers don't lie. It has been said multiple times that it is an attitude problem. We need to be honest. I think the purple hair dye is also a huge sign of a lack of focus. I mean, come on. He is the vice captain of AC Milan, not some teenager trying to get attention on social media. And those social media posts, those are just infuriating. The I don't care attitude, the you're just jealous mentality. It's unprofessional and disrespectful to the club, the fans, and the history of AC Milan, Alice. I'm very serious about it. Those players need to be much more focused. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for the future of the team.
But is that fair, Paul? I mean, can't players express themselves? It's just hair dye and social media. It shouldn't affect his performance on the field, should it?
Alice, it's not just hair dye and social media. It's about the message it sends. It's about priorities. When you're playing for a club like Milan, you have a responsibility to uphold a certain standard, both on and off the field. The purple hair, the provocative posts, it all suggests a lack of focus, a lack of commitment, and a lack of respect for the club. Plus, let's be honest, his performances have been subpar. He's not tracking back, he's making silly mistakes, and he's not the attacking threat he used to be. It all adds up, Alice. It's a pattern of unprofessional behavior that's hurting the team. The hair dye is a symbol of that lack of compromise and focus.
Okay, so you think his off-field behavior is directly impacting his on-field performance. But what about Conceicao? Shouldn't he be able to manage Theo? Get him back on track? I mean, isn't that part of the coach's job?
That's a great question, Alice, because honestly, Conceicao's decisions in this game were baffling. I mean, the most obvious one, why didn't he substitute Theo after he got that first yellow card? He was clearly nervous. He was making rash decisions. Any sensible coach would have taken him off to protect him and the team. It's obvious, you know? Conceicao showed a surprising lack of awareness in the heat of the moment. He needed to be proactive, not reactive. And what about taking Jimenez off? What was that about? Are you serious? The guy scores the opening goal, gives us the lead, and you take him off? I don't get it. It's hard to find a logical explanation, and it seems like he has completely lost the plot.
All right, so maybe he wanted to shake things up, bring on fresh legs. But why take off Jimenez instead of, say, Joao Felix, who, let's be honest, was pretty lightweight out there?
Exactly. Joao Felix is a talented player, no doubt, but he doesn't have the physicality or the work rate that Jimenez brings. Taking off Jimenez was a tactical mistake, and it completely backfired. The team lost its focal point in attack, and Feyenoord was able to push higher up the pitch. Seriously, Alice, I think that if I was the coach, I would have done a much better job. Now I know how the Inter fans are feeling, watching their team playing very well. The coach made the wrong decision, and that needs to be addressed very well.
It's interesting to see the different reactions to Theo's performance. You have Ibrahimovic, who's saying he's not one to fake it, basically defending him, while legends like Capello, Boban, and Van Basten are absolutely ripping him apart. What does that tell you about the situation?
It shows you there's a clear division in how to handle Theo, Alice. You know, Ibrahimovic is trying to protect his player, keep his confidence up, and maybe he genuinely believes Theo isn't a diver. But Capello, Boban, and Van Basten, they're seeing something deeper. They're seeing a lack of professionalism, a lack of discipline, and a lack of respect for the game. These guys have been there, they've done it all, and they know what it takes to win at the highest level. I stand for sure with Capello, Boban, and Van Basten. The level of compromise with a club needs to be at the maximum, otherwise it's very difficult to get things done.
So it's a clash between the old school and the new school, maybe? A difference in how you motivate and manage players?
Maybe, but I think it's more than that. I think it's about standards. Capello, Boban, and Van Basten are holding Theo to a higher standard, demanding more from him as a professional. They're not willing to excuse his behavior just because he's talented or popular. I think their criticism is a wake-up call, not only for Theo, but for the entire team. If you want to become a top club, you need players that are highly compromised. This is mandatory.
Let's talk about the financial impact of this elimination. Missing out on the Champions League round of 16 is a huge blow to Milan's finances, right? We are talking about tons of millions of euros.
Absolutely, Alice. We're talking about at least 10 million euros, probably more, that Milan will miss out on. That's money that could have been used to invest in new players, improve the training facilities, or pay off debts. It's a significant amount, especially for a club that's trying to compete with the top teams in Europe. But let's see if the club management is up to the task. Sometimes I have my doubts, to be honest. In the last years, they've been signing the wrong players and selling the key players in the roster. This needs to change ASAP.
And that money could have made a difference in the transfer market, right? Strengthen the squad for next season?
Exactly. It's a domino effect, Alice. The Champions League money allows you to attract better players, which makes you more competitive, which leads to more success on the field. By missing out on that revenue, Milan is putting itself at a disadvantage compared to its rivals. It's a setback that could have long-term consequences. Also, if we move to the market analysis, I don't think there are many teams interested in Theo at the moment, so his value went dramatically down, even more because of his attitude.
So what's next for Milan? They're out of the Champions League, but they still have the Serie A top 4 finish and the Coppa Italia to focus on. Can they turn things around?
They have to, Alice. They absolutely have to. Securing a top 4 finish in Serie A is crucial for qualifying for next season's Champions League, which, as we just discussed, is vital for the club's finances and prestige. And winning the Coppa Italia would give the fans something to celebrate after this disastrous Champions League campaign. But it won't be easy. The team needs to regroup, refocus, and show some serious mental toughness.
And what about Theo? Does he have a future at Milan after this? I mean, his contract is up in 2026, and there's been talk of a potential summer transfer.
That's the million-dollar question, Alice. Honestly, his future at the club is very uncertain right now. His performances have been declining, his behavior has been questionable, and now he's cost Milan a Champions League spot. If Milan receives a good offer for him in the summer, they might be tempted to sell. It would be a tough decision because he's a talented player when he's on his game, but they can't afford to keep a player who's not fully committed or who's hurting the team. It's that simple. But it would be very unlikely because nobody wants him at the moment.
So it all comes down to how he responds to this crisis, right? If he can turn things around, show some maturity, and prove that he's committed to the club, maybe he can still salvage his Milan career.
Exactly, Alice. It's up to him. He has the talent, he has the potential, but he needs to get his head right. He needs to focus on his football, ditch the distractions, and start acting like a true professional. Otherwise, his time at Milan could be coming to an end. The ball is in his court, and he needs to make the most of it. This needs to be crystal clear for him.
It's a shame, really. Milan started so strong. Jimenez scores in the first minute, and it looked like they were on their way to a comfortable victory. How frustrating is it to see that early advantage completely wasted?
It's incredibly frustrating, Alice. It shows the team's inability to capitalize on advantages. They get the early goal, they have the momentum, and they just can't close out the game. It's a recurring problem for Milan this season. They lack the killer instinct, the ruthlessness that separates the good teams from the great teams. And that comes down to mentality, leadership, and experience. A good leader doesn't get sent off in such a silly way.
And Conceicao taking responsibility, but also highlighting the team's lack of maturity. Is that just coach speak, or is there something more to it?
It's definitely more than just coach speak, Alice. Conceicao is trying to protect his players, take the pressure off them, but he's also acknowledging a systemic issue within the team. There's a lack of maturity, a lack of experience, and a lack of mental toughness. They crumble under pressure, they make silly mistakes, and they don't have the leadership to guide them through difficult moments. Conceicao needs to address those issues, instill a winning mentality, and build a team that can handle the pressure of playing for a club like Milan.
So what's the biggest takeaway from all of this, Paul? What's the one thing that Milan needs to fix to avoid another disaster like this in the future?
Milan needs a complete overhaul of its mentality, Alice. They need to bring in players who are not only talented, but also mentally strong, disciplined, and committed to the club. They need to develop a winning culture, a sense of responsibility, and a relentless desire to improve. And they need to hold everyone accountable, from the coach to the players, for their performances and their behavior. Until they fix those fundamental issues, they'll continue to fall short of their potential. And I will keep saying what I think, even if it sounds tough. But this is the reality.
All right, Paul, that's a pretty bleak outlook. But I guess that's what we get for a nightmare in San Siro. So, to everyone listening, what do you think? Is Theo Hernandez solely to blame? Can Milan turn things around this season? Let us know your thoughts. Thanks for tuning into the Milan Soccer Club podcast. Be sure to follow and subscribe for more Milan breakdowns.
And Alice, just one last thing. Maybe Theo should consider dyeing his hair back to its natural color, you know? It might be a start. You never know. And maybe he should give up on social media for some time and focus on training.